Hello everybody, I want to welcome you to the next edition of the BobCAD webinar series. Today's topic is what's new in V30, the Toolpath Editor Round 2. Okay, let's see what we got here. In today's webinar, we'll pick up where we left off and cover 3 additional commands of the Toolpath Editor. And as you know, my name is Al DiPaolo. I'm the voice of the BobCAD After Dark video series. You can find me on Instagram at Al DiPaolo or hashtag BobCAD After Dark. So let's see, what are we going to learn today? Today we're going to talk about 3 additional commands the Toolpath Editor offers. So we have trim and relink, we have replace, and then we also have extend cut. We're going to take a look at trim and relink, the trimming boundary selection, trimming what's inside of the boundary, trimming what's outside of the boundary, and the boundary usage. We'll also go over the link and retract options, okay? The other thing we're going to do is go through replace. We will go through the selected toolpath, depict the toolpath chain, and changing the direction. And then the final one we'll review today is going to be extend cut, selecting the toolpath, extension by percentage or extension by input, and we'll go through a few examples. Now, as always with BobCAD, you can expect fewer steps, better cuts, and more profit. Okay, so give me just a moment to get my screen set up here, and we'll jump right into it. Now, while we're waiting for my screen to get set up, let's go ahead and get a quick shout out. We got a bunch of different people here. We have been running the webinars week over week, so you will expect another webinar next week. Probably going to pick up on some of the differences in the 3D toolpaths and some of the changes that are there. But if you have a moment, just a quick shout out, just where you're from. Okay, a little housekeeping too. Everybody that's in today's webinar, you will get a recording of today's webinar. If you signed up for the webinar, we'll send you out a recording. The other thing is the way you communicate with me is through the questions dialog. In the GoToMeeting control panel, there's a questions dialog. You can write any question that you want. If I ask a question, you answer it in that section as well. I want to thank Erwin from New Jersey coming out. Hey, everybody, a little bit about Erwin. Erwin is I don't know how to say, I guess like an older young man who's doing some programming, some really cool stuff. We actually went through a design example of some helical slots this week. I really appreciate you joining me here today, Erwin, and I always like speaking with you. So thank you for coming out. We got John from Michigan, John from New Mexico. We got Ken and Patrick from Portland. Hello, guys. We got Jerry from Oklahoma, Larry from Tennessee. Let's see, Richard from Cary, Illinois, Ray from Michigan. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here today. I really enjoy doing these webinars, and I can't do them without you. So thanks for showing up. Tony from Massachusetts, James from Wisconsin, Mike from Indiana. Again, I want to thank everybody for spending some time with me here today. All right, so let me get over to my screen here. We should be able to see the BobCAD screen. The other thing that I wanted to know, and thank you for everybody that replies, John from Palm Harbor. Hey, John, you know we're right up the road, right? That's pretty cool. Maybe you can stop by later or check in with us. That'd be great. So the other question that I have for you guys is what version of BobCAD are you running? Are you running 21? Or earlier, the classic versions of BobCAD? Are you running 28, or are you running version 30? So if you can just write in what version of BobCAD you're running, that'd be great. If you're not running BobCAD, which is possible, I mean, sad, but it's possible, just write in that, I don't use BobCAD currently. That would be fine. All right, and then the last question that I had for you guys that are here is, what machine brand are you running? Haas, Herco, Mitsubishi, Prototrack, whatever it is, just write what brand machine that you're running. I'd appreciate a little insight on that, which would be great. Fadals, I really love Fadals. We got some Tormax in here, all Haas. I mean, we got a couple of different types of machines. Ken's got a Rover, Biesi Rover, so that must be a fun one to work with as well. So Akuma's, Cincinnati, Miltronics, one of my favorite, Centroid. Again, thank you guys for everybody just answering what you guys have over there. All right, again, any questions, just go ahead, brother. Is that a Speedo? Which one is that? Mitcha, am I saying that right? Which brother is it? I really like those brothers too. 3 Speedos, yeah, they're awesome. Awesome. All right, so again, any questions that you guys have, just go ahead and fire them away. I'll do my best to answer them as we go. Every question is a good question, and it helps me build my Q&A. So, it's a win-win for all. All right, so let me see here. Give me just a second to get the first file open. All right. Okay, so I have the first file open. So the first topic we're going to talk about is going to be trim and relink. Trim and relink is a command used to trim your selected toolpath to a boundary, allowing you to remove unwanted toolpaths. So I'm going to start with a very simple example. Now, in the previous webinar, I covered mainly 2D machining. In this webinar, I'm going to get into more of the 3D machining. Okay, so again, as a review, you can edit one operation at a time. You go over to that operation, you right-click, and you choose Edit. This is your Edit Tool Path dialog. Okay, there's the commands. There's 8 different commands that we have in here. We have our selection for our toolpath, which we can window select, we can chain select, we can polygon select. We can pick point select, where you can pick points along your toolpaths. You're going to have parameters that, basically the settings for whatever command that you're going to use. You have execute, you have undo, redo, animation, play, apply, and OK. Okay, so that's the basic layout of the toolpath editor. If you have more questions about the basic layout, I'd recommend you watch the first round because we go through everything pretty detailed. Okay, so today we want to talk about trim and relink. Again, we're going to go to our command here, and we're going to pick which one we want to use, and we're going to use trim and relink. As far as selected toolpath, what we're going to do is just window in everything to select all your toolpath. Okay, now just as a caution, if there is a lot of toolpath that you're selecting, it may take a moment to populate in the selected toolpath window because it's got to capture it all. So if you have a large roughinger team or something like that, just have that expectation. All right, so again, we're talking about trim and relink. So we selected our toolpath. If we look at our parameters, we have trim boundary. We can do standard picking. We can do polygon picking. We have inside, we can check or uncheck. We have in view and a couple of different options for our usage here. We get into our linking options. So let's take a look at this. We selected all this toolpath here, and on this this B1 layer, I have a boundary. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to trim the toolpath to that boundary. So I'm going to go to my parameters area here, and I'm going to go to my standard picking. So I'll click on that. And then I'm just going to move over that circle and I'll highlight it. Now it's really important that after you've picked your boundary that you lock in your selection. So we're going to do a right click OK, and that has locked in our selection. And you can see we get a little preview of what's going on here. It shows our chain, and then we have some of our usage. You have along X, you have along Y, along Z, or you have in view. Okay, so we'll get into some more examples with that. Again, what we're going to do here is we're going to do along Z. We have the chain. Okay, and then when we start looking at our link options, we can come down and we have a rapid retract plunge. We have a direct rapid. We have a direct feed. Okay, if you do retract plunge, you can say what plane it's going to go to, the rapid plane, the feed plane, the safe Z plane, or a custom plane. Okay, so in this example, let's just go ahead and do, retract. We'll say go to the rapid, and we'll execute it. And what we've seen here is this toolpath that we've generated here. We're trimming it out, and then it's relinking to connect. So we're saying that there's a void here, and we want to, avoid that void. And one of the ways to avoid the void is to trim it out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that. I'm going to do my selection again. So I'm going to click standard picking. I'm going to pick my circle here. Okay, it's really important that you OK your selection. So I'll right click OK. All right, and then this time what I want to do is I want to change from inside to outside. So I'm just going to uncheck this button here. Okay, and by unchecking that button, we're going to change what side is happening with our toolpath. We can have it going from the inside, or we can have it going to the outside. All right, so that's one of the key features of the trim boundary, is you can say, you know, keep the stuff inside, or you can say get rid of the stuff inside, okay? Or I guess it depends on how you look at it, but that is one of the options there, okay? All right, so we'll go ahead and undo that. We're going to look at this again. We're going to do our, we're going to select, okay, so I lost my toolpath, so I'm going to select my toolpath. I'm going to click on my boundary here. I'm going to click on this boundary. All right, I'm going to right-click OK to lock in the selection. This time, instead of having to go to retract, I'm going to do a direct rapid, which is one of the options here, and we'll go ahead and execute. And what's going to happen is where it runs into this void, instead of it going to a clearance, we're just doing a rapid move. Okay, so the tool would move along at a rapid rate as it relinks. So again, these are areas where you can optimize your toolpaths depending on different scenarios. All right, so we have our selection. Let's go ahead and undo. We're going to go back to our selection. We're going to window pick to get our selection. We're going to go to our trim boundary. We're going to click on our standard select here, or standard pick. We're going to go ahead and click on our boundary. We'll right-click OK, and that way we pick up that boundary, and then from there we can decide some of our link options. So we did a direct feed, we did a retract plunge, we did a direct rapid, this one's a direct feed, and we'll go ahead and execute. Now in this example, a direct feed doesn't really make sense, but again, I'm just going through the options. Okay, so let me back up for just a second. As review, to do your selection of toolpath, you can do a window selection. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. Now, if you're trying to isolate a specific area of this, or let's say you want to remove your selection, you can window pick again. So window pick once to select, window pick again to deselect. Window pick once to select. If you want to deselect it, you can right click and choose delete all. That's not delete your toolpath, it's just delete the selection. All right, okay, so we got this selected. The next thing that we want to look at here is our trim boundary. So when we go to our trim boundary, we're going to go to standard picking. Okay, so we can do standard picking, and then we can click on our boundary. It's very important that you lock in your selection, so we're going to right click OK. So once we've right clicked OK, we do have some inside or outside the boundary. We do have some usage options, and depending on what we're doing, and I'll show you in just an example, you're going to be able to adjust your usage if you're dealing with geometry that's in the XZ or YZ as your trim boundary, okay? All right, and then the last thing that you do here is you got your linkage, so you can change how it's going to link. A question did come in, let's see here. Can you use part boundary or center or cut center line? So what I'm seeing, like in our 3D toolpaths, you can say center line inside of the boundary, outside of the boundary. Here it trims to the boundary, so it's center line to the boundary, but it does give you an extension, so you can do an extension so it will extend past the boundary. And I believe, let me see if this is a negative number as well. I'm not sure. Yeah, you can do a positive or a negative number for your extension. I don't know that you would necessarily want a negative number for your extension, but you can have it extend past the edge of it. So like you see here, I did a negative number, so it did extend it past, but that's not really the result that we were looking for. So hopefully that makes sense, Ron. You can have it extend past, but trimming it away from the boundary, you would just need to use a different boundary. All right, so we got our selection, our window selection. We talked about our inside or check for inside or uncheck to get it to go outside, okay? We'll get into our usage a little bit more, and we talked about some of these options. Does that make sense, everybody? Is it, are we getting what are you picking up what I'm putting down here when it comes to the toolpath editor and trim and relink? Is there any questions about this at this time? Yes, this makes sense. Thank you, Ken. Very good. All right, so the big tip here, the one thing that I struggled with, and that's why I've gone through it 3 or 4 times now, is you window pick this, right? So you window pick this, you select your standard picking, you select your geometry. You do need to lock in your geometry. So right click OK. and that's how you lock it in. So it's just very important. That's the tip that I wanted to talk about there. All right, so we did that example there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some more geometry here, and we'll add this dome to the selection, and we'll recompute. Let's see, it yelled at me about top of job. Hold on a second, guys. Give me just a second here. Give me just a second. I got to get a different file up here. Now, has anybody tried using the Toolpath editor so far? I know I got some V30 users out there. So has anybody tried using the Toolpath editor? If you have, Ken said not yet. No luck. Were you having some difficulty with it, Leonard? Doug said he did. Ron said no. Doug, if you have, which way did you use it? What tool or what command did you use with it? I loved how you could drag around the line the object. Yeah, to move things. All right, cool. Oh, yeah, Leonard, okay. We're going to go through yours in just a minute here. All right, let me go through this again here. I got to edit the top of this job here a little bit. I'm not sure what it needs to be, so I'm just going to extend it up. And this way we can get some toolpath along this dome here, okay? So again, let's see, not yet extensions I'm using often. Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, 3D extract. Trying to get a feel for it. Yeah, it is a little bit different. I can tell you going through some of these webinars, I've definitely gotten a better feel for it. All right, so I'm going to talk here. I just have another example here. So I had Toolpath along the flat. Okay, so now what I want to do is look at making some edits along, you know, a more curved shape. So this one we have going up in Z. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is your boundaries that you use are generally to contain an X and Y. And what's kind of cool about the trim and relink is now you can kind of get into different areas. So again, I'm going to do a trim and relink. I'm going to window pick all of my toolpath here. I'm going to go to my boundary. I'm going to go to this B2 boundary. So this boundary you can see is along a different plane. I'm going to select it right here. I'm going to lock it in. Okay, and then this time I'm going to, see, I got to change my usage. If you look at it, it was from my in view. So if I was in the proper view, like a front view or a side view, it would utilize that. In this case, what I want to do is I want to change this along the x-axis. So this is part of what the usage is you can select a boundary and then you can say, you know, the usage of that boundary. Is it going to be along the X, along the Y, or along the Z? In this case, you know, Z would not give us the result really that we were after. Y isn't going to give us what we're after here either. Really, we need this X so we can trim out the toolpath that runs along the center here, okay? So we're going to go ahead and execute that, and here you can see how if there was a void there, now we're starting to trim that toolpath, not just like a 2D containment, but now you have a 3D containment, okay? So that's a little example there. Let me undo this again. I'm going to window pick. I'll go back to my selected toolpath, window pick everything. I'm going to click on my boundary. I'll click on the boundary I want to use. I'm going to choose OK to lock in the selection. I'm going to change from in view to along X, all right? And then I'm going to, again, go from instead of a retract, I'm going to do direct feed, okay? And we'll execute, and this is where you can see it will feed right across the part in that example, or we could have it as a rapid. All right, so this is just another example of using trim and relink. There's lots of different scenarios where this type of stuff comes up really handy. You know, a lot of the different Pro Toolpaths have operation stock, so you can define your stock to limit your boundaries or to trim the toolpath out of it. If you're a mill standard user and you don't have operation stock, then this is a tool that you could use to trim away toolpaths. So now let's go ahead and take a look at another example here. A similar example where we have in-process stock. Okay, so let's X this one out. Let me close this file here. I'm going to open up the next one. All right, so let's take a look at this. This, could be what you would see as just a typical, 2D type pocket where you come in here and cut this out. All right, I'm going to go ahead. Let me turn the solid off for a second, and I'll turn up the transparency of my stock. So you can see this is the in-process stock. It could be pre-machined. It could be casted. There's a lot of different scenarios. What is the other selection in the boundary? The other selection in the boundary was the Polygon pick. So instead of the standard pick, it's like a window pick, or or selecting a chain pick. It's a Polygon pick. So I can go back to that for you in just a second. Okay, Leonard. All right. So we got our pre-machined stock here, and then what we need to do is we need to cut this pocket out of it. All right. So if we look at our toolpath here, let me unlock this and recompute it. What we're going to see is that there's a lot of toolpath that's cutting air here. So what we want to do is we want to trim out that air. Okay, if we look at this from a side view, you can see there's all these air moves here because there's a void. Okay, so how would you do this? Now an XY boundary just won't cut it. If you use an XY boundary, you're only going to limit it in X and Y. If you use a Z boundary, or like a top and bottom of job, it would limit it in Z, but what if you wanted to trim this out? So this is another great example of using trim and relink. All right, so what we're going to do is go over and we're going to edit the toolpath. All right, let me turn the solid off for a second. So our command is going to be trim and relink. Our selected toolpath, again, I'm going to window pick everything that's in the screen here. So that's what I want to work with. Okay. Now, the boundary that I'm going to use is this boundary here. So like instead of the standard pick, I can do the Polygon pick. And basically, it just draws a polygon out and then would give you a boundary. So it picks up this boundary here versus the standard picking. Like the standard picking, I can select my chain or my arc that I've drawn, okay, where the Polygon pick is based off of the point locations that I pick up for a boundary, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Let me delete all this. Standard picking, I'm going to pick the chain up that I have here. Okay. Polygon pick, I'm going to kind of window pick, but a polygon pick in order to get around it. All right. All right. So I have my toolpath. I have my chain boundary. I'm going to do my usage along X. I'm going to do a trim. I don't want to do a retract. I mean, I guess I could do a retract, so let's do that. We'll do a retract, and you can see what it does is it trims away all that toolpath, and then it runs it back up to clearance. So let's undo that. We're going to go to our selected toolpath. We'll window pick all our toolpath in. We'll go to our trim boundary. We'll pick up our boundary, right-click OK to lock in the boundary. This time our usage is along X, and instead of retract, we're going to do direct feed in this example and then execute. And you can see how it still needs the link, so you're going to get some link moves that are in here, but you can see how we were able to remove a lot of that toolpath, okay? So let's cancel this. We're going to come in and look at our Toolpath Statistics. So on the Z-level rough here, we have, let's see, total feed entities. So we have 2,933 feed entities. 48 rapids, so we got, let's see, 2,981 is the total toolpath distance that it had to travel. Now the cycle time here we have at 8.23, All right, so now let's go ahead and make some changes to this. And if we simulate it, I'll run it through a simulation real quick, just so we can kind of see what we're talking about here. There's a question, can you review if you use the editor to avoid a clamp but move the clamp later, how do you regenerate for the new clamp position? Jerry, just like last week when we were trimming out, we used a boundary. If you move the clamp position, then you'll have to update it. Where did you pick the statistics at? You were so fast. Yes, I understand. I'll go back to that in just a second. Again, this is let's see, this is the simulation here, and again, we're just showing that we're getting a lot of air cutting because we have a void in the part, whether it's a pre-machine part or whether it's an in-process part. And a lot of times with these 3D shapes, you know, you're going to want to go ahead and trim out that. I mean, you wouldn't want to run it like that because you just know how much air time that you have. Now, you could boundary it off to a section to limit it, you know, so you do have different options. But again, what we're trying to do is just trim this toolpath away. So let's close this out. Now we have an idea of, you know, what we're trying to remove. We're going to come in here. We're going to do Edit Toolpath. We're going to change our command to Trim and Relink. We're going to window pick all of our toolpath here. We're going to click on our boundary here. Okay, our usage is going to be along X. All right, we're going to do a direct feed in this example. Oh, I got a lock in my selection. We're going to do a direct feed here. Let me do this again. So let me clear this. Okay, let me delete all this again. We're going to window pick all our toolpath. Okay, we're going to go to our boundary. We'll pick our boundary. Okay, this is going to be along X, and then we're going to do a direct feed and execute. And then there you can see it trimmed out all that toolpath. All right, so we're going to say OK. All right, now what we're going to do is, someone asked where the Toolpath Statistics are. If you right-click on your job, you can go to Toolpath Statistics, and this is just a fast way to get in here and see information about the job without having to launch like a setup sheet or get into simulation. So in this case, here you go. We went from 8 minutes and 23 seconds to 5 minutes and 20 seconds. By trimming that out, we went from, you know, 2,989 total entities down to 926. So that's a pretty significant savings just by trimming out some of this toolpath here. Okay. All right. So that's the example that I wanted to show on that one. I think that's about it. If there's any questions about that, go ahead and ask. Let me see here. Are those the toolpath travel limits? Yes, Richard, it does show the boundary of the toolpath. Notice that the extents are all zeroed now in the stat screen after trimming. That may be true. I don't know. I didn't pick that up. Let me see here. The extents, it may not pick up the extents after you've edited it. So that's a good point. I may need to report that one because it may not be returning that information. So thanks for that. Okay, very good. All right, so what else do we have? So we talked about trim and extend or trim and relink. The next one that I want to get into here is actually the replace command. So this is the next command. If there's any additional questions about trim and relink, go ahead and ask it now. Otherwise, you know, I won't know what it is, okay? All right, so let me get into the next file. So this one came in through the BobCAD Texas user group where there was a question about doing like a 3D profile or roughing a 3D profile. Give me a second here, guys. So there was a couple of different ways that we could do it. One of the ways that we could do it was with a step down with the advanced planar. Another way that we could do it was with, another way that you could do it is with the 3-axis wireframe. So there's two different scenarios that we were running through here. Okay, so in this particular example, you know, I mean, I mainly just based this off of some wireframe. So I drew up a square and I created some stock. So nothing special there. Here, what I did is I created a profile that I wanted to follow, and then I offset it for half the cutter. So, you know, a lot of times when you're when you're doing 3-axis wireframe, you know, you want to drive the tool based off the center of the ball, because tip compensation for ball mills is a little more complicated to calculate, but center compensation is pretty easy. So, you know, when you touch off your tool, you move it up by the radius of the cutter, and that becomes your new 0. And then what you can do is take the path you want to cut along, and then you can offset it for the radius of the cutter. So that's what we've done here. In this example, let me go ahead and unlock this operation and then recompute so we can start from scratch. So what I got here is I have the path that I want the tool to follow, and then what I have here is I have the offset for center line. So that's what's actually driving the tool, okay? So then from there, the first step that I want to do here is I want to trim out some of this toolpath. So if we look at it from a front view, you can see how, you know, we have more air cutting. This is our stock here, and we have more air cutting. So one of the first things I want to do is trim out the toolpath. So we're going to come in here and we're going to edit this toolpath, and we're going to do, let's just say, trim. Is it trim? Yeah, I'm going to do trim. I'm going to select all my toolpath here. I'm going to pick my boundary up. We're in view, so that's fine, and we're going to, let's see here. So okay on this, and we're going to execute. All right, so that's the first thing that does, is it trims out all the air moves that we have there. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to use the replace function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the toolpath that's here. All right, so I'm going to select all this toolpath here, and I'm going to do convert to CAD. All right, and I'll say OK, and then I'm going to say OK. So what's happened here is this is returned the toolpath. Okay, so I converted the toolpath into geometry. Then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these rapid lines, and I'm going to get rid of them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these lines with connect these paths with some lines. Okay, so what this is essentially doing is it's chaining this path. So if I select it, you can see it's a chain now. All right, so now what I'm going to do is get back into the feature, and I'm going to edit it again, and this time I'm going to use the replace function. Okay, so replace is used to replace the selected toolpath with a different chain to be used as a toolpath. All right, so this is where you can convert to CAD, you can make some modifications, and then you can go in and replace what you have. This will also give you direction control, so you can change the direction that things are done in. All right, so we have our selected toolpath. Okay, so our chains, what we want to do is go to our pick mode here. So Toolpath Chain, we're going to do pick, and then I'm going to come up here and, you know, get into the end of this, and I'll shift click on it, and then I'll OK. So now I have this chain. All right, so some of the things that you're going to want to do is, you know, maybe control what direction it's cutting in and things like that. So if you go into the Toolpath Chain dialog, you can right click here and you can delete all, delete all, modify start point or reverse direction, just like you would have modify start point or reverse direction on a standard profile. Okay, I was using it on a single line box, now I see. Okay, cool. All right, so now we're going to do a reverse direction to make sure that we get it cutting the right way. So it's going to come down this way and work that way, and away we go. We're going to go ahead and choose execute, and then OK. So this is an example of how we trim down our 3D wireframe toolpath, and then also turned it into a zigzag in order to work its way to get down to the bottom. Okay, so this is, again, another way that you can use the toolpath editor. This is the replace example that I have. All right, so again, let's go ahead and close this out. There was 2 steps here. First, we did a trim and relink. Then we did a convert to CAD. Then we edited our CAD geometry, and then we did a replace. Okay, is there any questions about that? Anything that you guys have? The big takeaway here, if we go back in here, I'm sorry, wrong dialog. When we go back in here and we edit this and we're doing replace, in order to change the direction of the chain, it is the right click in this window. So it's not apparent just by this dialog box, so it's important for you to know right click in order to get into those options. Okay, when you pick geometry, lock in your geometry as well with a right click OK. All right, so that's what I got on this one. If there's any questions, we'll review that. Otherwise, we will continue on. All right, sounds good. Now, the next file that I want to look at here is the extend. Okay, so the extend option is pretty cool. There's a lot of different ways that you can use that. This is the file that I have here. Let me close this guy out here. All right, and let me close this guy out here. All right, so we have this file, and we want to look at some of the extend options. So if you've ever wanted to extend the toolpath out past the edge of the part, this is one of the ways in which you can do it. Normally, a lot of times, the way I'll accomplish this is either with the premium surface-based toolpaths, because they have an extension option in there. Prior to that, it would really just be extending surfaces. So if you wanted, the toolpath is driven on the surface, so you would extend the surface out. In this case, what we can do is just go to Edit Toolpath. All right, the command that we're going to look at is Extend, Cut, Move. By default, it will select all your toolpath, okay? So it just selects everything automatically, and then you have an extension. You can make this number bigger. You can make this number smaller. The default is a percentage of the tool. But you can click on the percentage button, and then that will make it a value. So you can make it 1 inch, or you could make it 100 thou. So you can switch back and forth between the percentage or the input field. Now, if you didn't want to use if you didn't want all of the toolpath to have an extension, you could do a window pick or a polygon pick just on a portion of the toolpath as well. So you could do a portion, or you could do all of it, all right? And that's really just about it on extension. It's really just that simple. Extend, Cut, Move is used to extend the end of the entire toolpath or the selected toolpath. You can do it by a percentage, or you can do it by a value. Okay, so that's one way to get it to start and finish off the edge of the part. Let's look at a different example here. I have some project curves here. I have this this radius that I'm wanting to put on to break that edge there. So, I may want it to start and finish off the end of the part. I can right-click on this, Edit Toolpath. We're going to do Extend, Cut, Move. We have our percentage. We can say, well, okay, so one of the things that if we say execute, generally what you're going to see is a double, because when you execute it and you OK, you're going to get double the length here. All right, so the workflow or the tip on this one here is when you're doing Edit Toolpath, here, let me unlock it and recompute to start over. We're going to go to the operation, Edit Toolpath. What's going on here? Let me give it just a second. Let me go to a different one. Let's see. Okay, so this one came up. Let me go back to this one. Yep, I don't know. It doesn't want me to get into it. So let me go to the next one. But what I'm showing you here is the workflow on this input. So we're going to go to this one here. It doesn't matter which one we're on. We're going to go to this one here. This is the Z level. You can see here how it's starting right on the edge of the part. We may want to extend it out. Okay, so we're going to go to our Extend, Cut, Move, and then instead of choosing Execute and then OK, the workflow that you want to do here is you want to go to Apply and then OK, and then that way it doesn't do a double extension, or at least that is what I found. When it turns red, it locks itself. Yes, when you edit your toolpath, when you get done with that dialog, it will turn red, letting you know that that feature has been edited, and it will lock it automatically. So that way you can't compute the toolpath by accident and reset the values there. Okay, if you want to continue to edit, you can come back into it and edit toolpath, and you can continue to add combinations of edits, but this way you don't get locked out. Or by locking it like we do, you can't compute it by accident and then remove all of the changes that you had made. Okay, so all right, so we have extend, and we have by percentage, or we have by value. So we have the Z level finish doing this here. We did the planar one, was working just fine. This project curves, for some reason it got hung up on something. I probably just need to close the file and open it back up and refresh whatever's stuck in memory there. Jerry had a question: if you regenerate it, will it keep the edits? If it's locked, you can't regenerate. If you come in and you edit the toolpath, you can continue to edit the toolpath, okay? If you want to recompute the toolpath, you have to unlock it. When you unlock it, if you recompute the toolpath, it's going to go back to the default without the edits, okay? So really what you got to do is you got to have your toolpath set up as far as your tool and your depth and width and everything else, and now you're just looking at editing, you know, whether it's extension or some of the feed rates and things like that. So you get the toolpath done first, and then you go in and use the editor, and you can layer edits on top of it. Does that make sense? All right, sounds good. All right, so again, let's see, we have another one here. I have some flatlands that I've done. You know, the extension does work with all the different toolpaths. We can come in here. Oh, let me go in and edit this guy, and we're going to do extend cut. You can see that it extends out further. Now, whether that makes sense or not, I don't know if this is the best toolpath for that, but it does work with all the different toolpaths that are there. All right. Okay, so looks good. So we got about 20 minutes left. Those are the 3 topics that I wanted to cover today. If there are any open dialogue or any questions that you guys want to get into, you know, open Q&A right at this point. Again, I really appreciate everybody spending some time to hang out with me here today and to go through some of these new features. Let me close this guy out here. We can go back to let me open it back up and see if I can get in here and edit this guy. All right, so we got project curves. We're going to come in, edit toolpath. All right, so we're going to go to extend cut move. So we can see that it's extended out. We're going to do apply, okay, and there you go. So now we have that extending past the edge of that radius that we have there. Okay, all right, let's see. I'm trimming under my boundary. I'm not sure what you mean under my boundary. Like in your example, the other one that we had done here, right? So this one here, my boundary looked like this. So my boundary is on top. If we come in here and unlock this and we recompute, you can see that I want to trim everything that's in this boundary. So we're going to right click, edit toolpath. Okay, we're going to do trim and relink. We're going to window pick all our toolpath. We're going to come in and standard picking, select our boundary. We're going to right click OK to lock it in, and then we're going to execute. You'll see how it trims that down. James said he missed the previous webinars, but what is the intent of update all geometries? Update all geometries intent is to allow you to change a machine setup location or change some aspect of your geometry and not have to go through and reselect and recompute. You can just choose update all geometry and recompute. So what this has to do with is when you've already programmed the job and then you're either changing a 0 or you're changing some aspect of your toolpath, you can do an update all geometry, and then what it does is it reselects all the toolpath in the background so you can recompute versus having to go through each feature and do that yourself. Does that make sense, James? I'll probably cover that in some of the upcoming webinars that I have planned. I also want to throw out, if there's any specific topics you guys would like to see covered in the up and coming webinars, go ahead and you can write them there. Okay, let's see. then you recompute afterwards. Yes, you update the geometry, update all geometry, and then you recompute. Doug had a question, will the trim work with rotary axis? So that's a great question. The Toolpath editor works with your 2, 3, 4, and 5-axis edits. So I don't have a rotary example set up. You mean like again, where like maybe you've indexed and you've cut away some of the material and then now you're on another side and you're trying to trim away Toolpath? If that's what you're thinking about, Doug, then yeah, you could definitely do that. Ken had a question, how does the edit Toolpath work with advanced roughing paths? It's the same thing. Again, it's just another way to edit your toolpath, or another way. I mean, if we're talking about trim and relink, it's another type of boundary you could use, Ken. But there's a lot of different ways in which you could use the editor. So I'm going to just kind of throw something up here. Let's do something like this, and we'll just put a circle on here. All right, and then what we're going to do is just extrude this. Doesn't really matter. Let me give you an example. This is another example of, one of the things that you can do with this Toolpath editor. We'll go to a 4-axis machine here, and let's do, I mean, it really doesn't matter. It could be rectangular. Let's go to a top view here. Okay, so we got something like this, and then we got our origin. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, I probably want it to be more of a cylinder, so let me do that. Okay, so here I'm going to do a rotary toolpath. We're going to select all. All right, this one is going to be a long. We'll do a zigzag and compute. And then what this is going to do is generate some toolpath to move back and forth along this part. Okay, so this is just another example. So it comes down and it comes over and it comes down and it comes over. Well, here's the thing. This first cut here is going to be a pretty heavy cut. So if I step through here, this first cut here is going to be pretty heavy because the tool is completely engaged, So there's times and scenarios where things like this come up. And, so what can you do about it? Well, one of the things that you can do about it is you can come in here. I guess this is a little tough, so let me turn my, let me turn this down so it makes it a little easier for me to see. So I'm going to be able to see this first cut right here is our first cut, So let me turn my axis display on. If you guys haven't watched the first webinar on the Toolpath editor, I'd recommend you do so because there's 8 commands. These are just the last 3 commands. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit Toolpath. Okay, I'm going to do a modify attributes. I'm going to do selected Toolpath, and I'm going to just get, I may end up getting the one on the bottom too. So let's just do a standard one, which is this one. We probably could even make it, there's a bunch along there. So we could say this one and this one. Let's say those 2 cuts. Those are the first 2 cuts. So we could take these 2 cuts here and do a user define and maybe really slow these down. Apply all. Okay, so what we've done is on this cut here, this first move, what we've done is we've slowed down what this feed rate is. Okay, so then after it gets through this section here, what it's going to end up doing is speeding up again. So this way, as it's engaging through that first cut, it's slower, and then once it gets into the cut, then it can speed up its speed rate. That's just a quick example of how you can edit things on the fly. These are things that generally you would have to do with the Toolpath, with the G code directly, and so you can make those edits in the G code, but depending on the complexity of the part and how many operations and things like that, it can be a lot easier to set this stuff right in the toolpath. So again, you had a question about the advanced rough. The toolpath editor you're going to have access to with any of the 3D toolpaths, any of the 2-axis toolpaths, the drilling, 3-axis, 4-axis, all the way up to 5-axis, you'll be able to edit with the toolpath editor. Does that make sense, Ken? All right, let's see here. Is there any other topics you guys want to talk about? Again, open questions here for another 10 minutes to see if we can cover anything else. And again, if there are any topics that you would like to see covered in BobCAD's webinars, just please write out what those topics are. So Erwin said, can you step in? I guess one of the things we could do here again, if we undo this guy here, so we're going to unlock, we're going to recompute. Okay, I'm going to add a new layer over here. We can do edit toolpath. We can select, this first line here. We can do convert to CAD. Okay, so what that does is it gives us our CAD geometry, and then from there, let me blank this guy out. We can take this guy and do translate. All right, we'll make it a little bit easier for Al, so we'll make it 1/4 inch, and we'll say make 2 copies or 3 copies. All right, we'll say OK. So then we'll join this up. So we'll say line join from here to here, here to here, here to there. All right, so that becomes that. Then we can come back in and edit this guy. So we're going to edit. We're going to do a replace. So we're going to select that first line again. It's not the correct line, so let me delete. It's this guy here. It's kind of weird, so we're going to take that one and we're going to replace it with this chain. So we're going to pick this and we want it to reverse that direction. It looks like I have a problem with the start point location here, but I'll go ahead and execute it anyways, and we'll say OK. And you can see the premise. I missed one of the first entities there, but you can see the premise. See, it goes down and then it goes over. So I probably would want to remove this first line as well. But you can see how I was able to add like a zigzag to get down in there. Let me let's try editing it again. Let's select this guy here and delete that. Let's do this guy here and delete that. Yeah, I got to, because of where the first one comes down. So what I probably want to do is maybe move this one here. Maybe this and that and this. All right, let's do it. Drag. See if that will do what I want. I got to make this adjustment so that it doesn't come down here and come over to there. But you can definitely see the direction that I'm going in here. You definitely, when you're at the start of the cut and the end of the cut, that can be a little more, just you got to pay more attention to what you're doing. So let's unlock it. Let's recompute. Okay. Let's come back and edit. Let's do a, let's try the replace again. Let's see. Selected toolpath is going to be this one and this one. And that one. And then the selected chain, it's going to be that. But I want it going the other way. Yeah, I got it a little bit closer here, but I'm not quite there yet. Let's go ahead and execute. We'll animate. So we see that it comes down to that spot and then comes up and over. So let's try move. Let's select. this guy, drag, give me what I want there, execute. No, we're close, but it's still not quite what I'm trying to show. I'm really close to it though. But anyways, you guys get the idea of the direction that I'm trying to go here. Let's see, a couple other questions came in. Can you step down the first pass? Well, that's what I'm showing you there is the step down on the first pass using the convert entities and then using the replace command. There's another question, is the lock selection with OK the same as spacebar? I'm not sure if the spacebar carries over, so let's cancel. Let's edit the toolpath. Let's try again. So let's go this guy, and that guy. So we'll take all of that and let's choose replace. We'll go to our pick here. We'll chain select. We'll spacebar. So yes, spacebar does work. So you're in the same boat there, okay, Doug? So basically you can draw anything and make it your toolpath either center line or profile offset. Yes, Jerry, you can draw anything and make it your toolpath. It's going to be center line because all you're doing is taking the wireframe geometry that you have and you're replacing it. So any compensation or anything like that, collision checking, all of that is going to be up to you. Okay? All right. So hopefully that answers your question. We have a couple more minutes here before we get started. So let me go ahead and cancel this. Let me let's see if I can get this to do what makes sense. So we're going to do let's start with a move. You know, I don't know all of what it's looking at here. Let's go to one of these. We're going to do window like that and a window. So we got these here. I'm going to make this a drag. Let's move it up, say execute. All right, so that gives us this section here. So now let's do a replace, and we'll say that, this, and this. Well, let's find out. So we'll do that. And then we're going to replace it with this. We want that going the other way. And let's execute. All right, so that looks a little bit better. We still have this one link move that we have going up and down. So let's try selecting this and just doing a delete and execute. Yeah, it doesn't seem to want to get rid of that guy. Execute. So I'll have to go through this again. Oh, there we go. I got it away. So let's see what it looks like now. So we have it start over there and go down, and there you go. All right. So that's, again, just an example of how you can use replace. Obviously, I had to go through the steps a couple of times, but hopefully you guys got what you're looking for there. Now, again, I appreciate everybody coming out. We're going to wrap up here. We got about 2 minutes left. Make sure to sign up for next week's webinar. We're going to go into more 3D machining. Hey, Leonard, absolutely. Thank you so much for showing up here today. Jerry, thank you for coming. Doug, thank you so much. Mike, Erwin, Ken, James. I want to thank each and every one of you for making my webinar so much fun to do. If there's any last questions, go ahead and ask them now. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, Ron, see you next week. Thank you, Tony. Very good. Absolutely. No problem, guys. Thank you so much.